Hey everyone. So you've sent us some really fascinating stuff this time, digging into how businesses charge different prices for, well, what looks like the same thing.
Yeah, we got a real mix articles, even a pretty detailed PDF on price discrimination. It definitely sparks some questions.
Absolutely. So for this deep dive, our mission is basically to unpack this whole strategy. Figure out why companies do it, what it really means for us as consumers.
Right. And this idea of price discrimination, it's not just random pricing. It's quite deliberate. Sellers try to estimate what different people or groups are willing to pay.
And then they set the price based on that estimate.
Exactly. The main goal for the business is boosting profits by capturing more of what's called consumer surplus.
Okay, consumer surplus. Let's break that down a bit. Like, if I'd happily pay $100 for something, but I get it for $70.
That $30 difference, that's
Mhm.
your consumer surplus, your gain.
Got it. So businesses are trying to get a piece of that $30 or maybe even all of it?
Precisely. They want price closer to the maximum you would have paid.
Yeah. But you mentioned it's not always like us getting ripped off. Sometimes this can actually expand access or fund new stuff.
That's a crucial point. It's complex. There are downsides for sure, but also potential upsides. The sources break it down into three main types or degrees.
3 degrees. Okay, sounds like we're getting into the details now. Let's start with the first one. First degree price discrimination.
Right. First degree, sometimes called perfect price discrimination.
Yeah.
This is like the ultimate goal for a seller, theoretically speaking.
Meaning what exactly?
Meaning they could charge each customer the absolute maximum price that specific customer is willing to pay for every single unit they buy.
Wow. So if I pay $5 for a coffee, I pay $5. But if you'd only pay $4,
You'd pay $4. In this perfect scenario, the seller captures literally all that consumer surplus we talked about.
that sounds incredibly profitable for them. But how often does that actually happen? How would they even know my absolute limit?
That's the big challenge. It requires, well, a massive amount of information about every single buyer's individual preferences.
Yeah, so where?
In its purest form, yes, very rare. But the sources give examples where things get closer. Think about dynamic pricing online, like on Amazon sometimes.
Ah, yeah, where the price seems to change based on, what, my search history?
Could be browsing history, maybe location, past purchases. Their algorithms are trying to guess your willingness to pay in that moment.
Okay, that makes sense. And car dealerships. That negotiation feels a bit like this.
Definitely. That whole back and forth. The salesperson is trying to gauge you, figure out your budget, how badly you want that car, to get as close to your maximum price as possible. It's a very direct attempt.
So they're building a price profile on the spot? Sort of, but it sounds incredibly hard to get perfect.
It is. The PDF stresses how much data you'd need. But, with big data and AI getting better, businesses are definitely trying to get closer to this ideal.
Makes you wonder if clearing your cookies actually helps.
Okay, so that's first degree, super personalized, super difficult. What's the second one? Second degree. Yeah, second degree price discrimination. This is a bit more practical, generally. It's not about knowing you individually.
So how does it work then?
It's about structuring prices based on quantity or version. Think bulk discounts or different versions of software. The idea is to get consumers to sort themselves into price tiers.
Ah, okay. So you offer options, and I choose based on what I need or how much I'm buying, like Costco.
Exactly like Costco. Buy a giant pack, the price per item goes down. They don't know your personal budget, but they know some people will buy more if the per unit cost is lower.
Right. Or software you mentioned, like different subscription levels.
Perfect example, Adobe Creative Cloud maybe. An individual plan versus a full business or enterprise plan. Different features, different prices. You select what fits.
I see. I'm making the choice that reveals something about my needs or willingness to pay. What about airlines? Like paying extra for legroom?
That fits too. Premium economy, seats with more space. They offer a better version of the service at a higher price. People who value comfort more or can afford it self-select into that higher tier.
So the business sets up the structure, and we do the segmenting work for them, in a way.
Pretty much. That's the key advantage over first degree. It's much easier to implement because you don't need that deep individual data. You rely on consumer choice within the structure you provide.
Makes sense. Much more common, I'd guess.
Definitely.
Okay, on to the third one then. Third degree price discrimination. You said this was the most common.
That's right. By far the most widespread. Here, the seller divides customers into distinct groups based on identifiable characteristics.
Like, what sort of characteristics?
Things like age, location, student status, maybe even the time they're buying. Then they charge different prices to those different groups.
Okay, so this is where student discounts come in,
Uh,
or senior discounts at the diner.
Precisely. Students as a group are often assumed to have less income or be more sensitive to price. So movie theaters, software companies, they offer a lower price. Same logic for many senior discounts.
Got it. It's about the average tendency of the group, not the individual.
Exactly. And it assumes these groups have different price elasticities, different sensitivity to price changes.
What about geographic pricing, like drugs costing different amounts in different countries?
Classic third-degree example. Pharmaceutical companies might charge more in wealthier countries and less in developing nations based on the overall ability and willingness to pay in those entire markets.
And early bird tickets for concerts or events, is that the same idea?
Yep. Target the price-sensitive folks who plan ahead with a lower price. Those who buy last minute, perhaps less price-sensitive or just didn't plan, pay more.
So the key here is being able to easily identify these groups, right?
Absolutely. Age, student ID, location, these are often relatively easy to verify. That's why third degree is so common in practice.
Okay, so we have these 3 degrees: perfect, quantity version-based, and group-based. But companies can't just decide to do this anywhere, can they? What conditions need to exist in the market?
Great question. No, they can't. The sources point out some key necessities. First, and maybe most important, is market power.
Meaning the seller has to have some control over the price, not like a farmer selling wheat where the price is just the price.
Exactly. Perfect competition makes price discrimination impossible. You need some level of monopoly power, or maybe an oligopoly, or just a really differentiated product that gives you pricing leverage.
Like Apple with iPhones, maybe? They have a strong brand. People want that phone.
That's a good example. Their market position allows more flexibility than a company selling very generic smartphones.
Okay, market power.
Yeah.
What else? You mentioned segmenting markets earlier.
Yes, the ability to segment. The seller has to be able to identify and separate those groups with different willingness to pay. And, crucially, keep them separate.
Keep them separate. How?
Well, prevent the ones getting the low price from just reselling to the ones being charged the high price.
Ah, okay. Which leads to the next condition, right? Preventing arbitrage.
Exactly. Arbitrage is just that, buying low in one segment and selling high in another. If that's easy to do, the whole strategy falls apart.
So it works better for things you can't easily resell, like a service maybe, or a concert ticket with your name on it.
Perfect examples. Services are consumed immediately. Non-transferable items, personalized digital goods, they make arbitrage difficult or impossible.
Okay, market power, segmentation, preventing resale. Is there one more?
Yes, the fundamental driver, differentiated willingness to pay. There just has to be actual variation in how much different consumers or groups value the product. If everyone valued it identically, there'd be no basis for different prices.
That makes sense. Luxury goods tap into that, right? People
Well,
valuing the status.
precisely. Some people are willing to pay a huge premium for that Gucci bag, others aren't. That difference is key.
All right, so those are the market conditions. Now, flipping it around, what about us? What characteristics do we have as consumers that maybe unintentionally make price discrimination easier for businesses?
Well, a lot stems from that differentiated willingness to pay we just mentioned. Our preferences are just heterogeneous, diverse.
Meaning we all value things differently. Based on income or how badly we need something right now?
Exactly. Income, urgency, brand loyalty, personal taste, it all creates variation. A wealthy traveler versus a backpacker looking at the same flight, very different valuations.
Okay, so our diversity helps them. What else?
Differences in our price elasticity, how sensitive we are to price changes. We talked about students and seniors often being more price sensitive.
Right, so if a price goes up, they're more likely to say no thanks than maybe a business traveler.
Right. Generally, yes. So businesses can offer targeted discounts to keep the price-sensitive groups buying while charging more to others.
And those observable characteristics we keep mentioning, age, location, job.
They make segmentation easy, especially now, online. Digital footprints, IP addresses, tracking cookies, they give companies powerful tools to infer group membership or even individual sensitivity. Think Uber search pricing again.
Yeah, based on time and where you are. Very observable.
And our limited ability to easily resell things, that lack of arbitrage capability, that's also key on the consumer side.
Right. I can't sell my cheap student software license to my lawyer friend.
Not easily or legally, no. Things like personalized subscriptions really lock that down.
Okay. Is there anything else about us?
Information asymmetry, that's a big one.
Meaning we don't always know what others are paying or it's hard to compare?
Exactly. If pricing is opaque, or if it's just really complex and constantly changing like airline fares often are,
Mhm.
it's harder for us to know if we're getting the best price or the same price as the person next to us.
So less transparency can definitely work in the seller's favor here.
It certainly can, which naturally brings up questions about fairness and the ethics of it all.
Yeah, I was thinking about that. Is this always fair? Are there legal issues?
There can be. Fairness is a big concern, especially if it seems like vulnerable groups are being exploited or if data is being used in ways people aren't aware of or comfortable with. Think about surge pricing during an emergency that often gets huge backlash.
Rightfully so.
Yeah.
And legally.
Laws vary. In the U.S., antitrust laws might come into play if price discrimination harms competition. In the EU, there are strong consumer protection regulations regarding transparency and fairness. It's not always illegal, but it can be, depending on the context and impact.
And how do we feel about it? Consumer perception must matter hugely.
Massively. If people feel they're being treated unfairly or gouged, it can really damage a brand's reputation. Transparency and how things are framed make a big difference.
Framing, like calling it a discount instead of a surcharge.
Exactly. A loyalty discount feels much better than a non-member penalty, even if the final prices are the same. Think Starbucks rewards.
Good point. And technology is obviously making this more sophisticated, right? AI and big data.
Absolutely. They enable hyper-personalized pricing on a scale never seen before. But that also ramps up the privacy concerns alongside the potential for discrimination.
So looking at the big picture, what are the main economic effects, good and bad?
Well, on the plus side, it can increase efficiency. By charging different prices, firms might serve customers who wouldn't have bought at a single higher price. Those student discounts mean more students see movies.
Okay, broader access potentially?
And the increased profits for the seller can fund innovation, research, new product development.
But the downside?
The main one is reduced consumer surplus overall. More of the value goes to the seller. And it can worsen inequality if the higher prices systematically hit certain groups harder, or if discounts primarily benefit those who already have advantages.
It's definitely a double-edged sword then. Lots to weigh up.
For sure. It's a really powerful tool, but one with significant implications.
This has been incredibly insightful. Seriously, it changes how you look at almost every transaction. So for everyone listening, think about it. When have you been on either end of this? Gotten a special price, or maybe suspected you paid more than someone else?
Yeah, reflect on your own experiences. And looking ahead, as technology like AI makes pricing even more dynamic and personalized, what does that mean for us? How do we balance the potential benefits with fairness and access?
That's the big question, isn't it? Definitely something to keep thinking about long after this deep dive ends.